Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Lainey Lambrink. We begin in Nunavut, where the corporate arm of the Qikiqtani Inuit Association is suing the federal government. The Qikiqtaluk Corporation claims it should not have paid corporate tax years ago. The CBC's Nick Murray explains why.
The Qikiqtaluk Corporation is going after taxes paid from 2000 to 2016. It also filed two more identical requests for judicial reviews for two of its subsidiaries, Qikiqtaluk Properties and Qikiqtani Retail Services. QC alleges that because QIA is a public body performing the function of government, and because QC serves as QIA's business arm, that it should not have to pay taxes. This all dates back to changes made by Parliament in 2012. It created that designation of a public body performing the function of government to recognize Indigenous governments and their business arms. The law was meant to reverse the impacts of a 2001 Quebec Court of Appeal decision, which suddenly made corporations owned by First Nations bands ineligible for tax exemptions. QC alleges it was reassessed by the Canada Revenue Agency after Ottawa changed the law, but QC says the CRA made mistakes in determining that QC should pay tax because it was earning income outside of Nunavut. QC is asking the federal court to make the CRA go back and reassess it again. Nick Murray, CBC News, Iqaluit.
The Roman Catholic Church in Iqaluit is unhappy it has to pay $38,000 in property taxes. Church leadership brought the issue to Iqaluit City Council last night, asking to repeal a bylaw passed in 2022. It requires religious and nonprofit organizations to pay property taxes after previously being exempt. They say they are the only church in Canada that has to pay property tax.
This situation has and will create a great and crushing financial burden on most religious and charitable institutions in Iqaluit, and many of them will not be able to sustain the payments of these property taxes, not to mention the onerous bureaucratic obligation of filing reports and requesting for leniency. And we would venture to guess that most of the institutions will not be able to pay the amount imposed upon them, and they will enter into debtor status with the city.
Murray says the issue could also go against the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that the old exemption was to allow freedom of religious expression. Councillor Kyle Shepard says religious and nonprofit organizations pay the tax to put them on the same level as residents.
The intent was that the exemption process could be utilized to put everybody on the same playing field with the other charitable organizations and other groups doing similar work in town, when the reality is that the city of Iqaluit has difficulty, supporting such a significant amount of money across the entire community. That was the reasoning for the actual bylaw itself.
Shepard says council will consider the issue more at a future meeting. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe pushed against the federal carbon tax at a House of Commons committee today. The price per ton of carbon is set to rise by 23% on Monday. Moe is among several premiers calling for the tax to be ended altogether, including the premier of the NWT. RJ Simpson wants to see a blanket exemption from the tax for the territory. Scott Moe told the committee today the levy is making industries less competitive and life more unaffordable.
And the latest consumer price index came out. Saskatchewan today is at 1.7%, down under the 2% projected target that the Bank of Canada had hit, 1 full point lower than the Canadian average. And Statistics Canada had said specifically that was due to a decision that the Saskatchewan government made to remove the carbon tax from home heating. And so you can imagine what would happen to our CPI nationwide if we were to pause, first of all, and then remove the consumer carbon tax on Canadians.
Moe was invited to appear by Conservative MPs, but he got pushback from Liberal, NDP, and Bloc Québécois MPs who asked him what he would do to cut emissions. There could be a new place to camp in Yellowknife soon. City Council approved a bylaw amendment during a meeting Monday. It allows the development of a commercial campground in the Grace Lake area. But first, they let residents voice their concerns, and those opposed did not hold back. Robert Holden has more.
And I will open up the public hearing. Would anybody like to speak against the bylaw?
Personal, I don't want it out there.
And he's not alone. A big concern, potential fire hazards. Grace Lake resident Eric Roberts says he's worried over the presence of more open fire pits.
Well, we live out there, and there's going to be traffic going out there, and there's going to be noise, and there's a fire hazard.
Arctic Farmer applied for the bylaw amendment so it could operate the campground. It previously ran an unauthorized campground on the site, which was shut down last summer by the city. Councillor Stacey Arden-Smith is also against the amendment and Arctic Farmer's past behavior.
I am not a fan of it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And I think this sets a precedence. I don't think it is fair for other residents and other leaseholders to have to abide by the rules while somebody else isn't.
Andrew Tucker lives on Braden Boulevard, close to the proposed site. He says putting it there could lead to a lot of late nights and loud noises.
I can't imagine any resident that would want a campground in their own backyard, so that's why I'm opposed to it.
It remains unclear if Arctic Farmer was penalized for the unauthorized campground. CBC News attempted to reach them but didn't hear back. 8 out of 9 councillors, including the mayor, voted yes to the bylaw amendment. The city will next draft a development permit for the site, but no clear answer on when it might open. Robert Holden, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The city of Whitehorse is moving a major road closer to the Yukon River. The Robert Service Way is being shifted in case there are more landslides coming off the escarpment. Landslides have forced the city to close the road in the spring, the past 2 years. City workers are currently installing concrete barriers to guide the road's new alignment. The city's manager of engineering services says cars heading into the city will be driving on the road's shoulder.
Last year we did some paving work to pave the shoulder. Recognized last year was challenging with the orientation of the road and that the one lane was kind of half on the pavement and half on the gravel shoulder. This year the entire lane will be on the pavement and it'll just accommodate that shift a lot better this year.
Esh Peter says the city's slope scanning radar has not detected any shifts in the escarpment yet, but he says if there is a landslide, the city is well prepared to deal with it. From landslide prep to flood prep, Hay River's West Channel is getting $1.1 million for critical upgrades. The money comes from the federal government and the upgrades are a relief for residents. The town was knee-deep and damaged when a flood struck 2 years ago. Carla Ulrich has that story.
Hay River SAO Glenn Smith says the funding will pay for upgrades to offer more protection to the area after a flood in 2022 caused significant damage.
So we'll see enhancements throughout the entire berm system, some cases moving it back a bit from where it is eroding into the lake, increasing some elevations, relocating the portion that's Alaska Road, and then some expansion of the berm.
Sean Buckley is a local commercial fisherman. His property was extensively damaged in the 2022 flood. He says he's happy they are putting money into flood mitigation.
But the berm itself stopped a lot of floods from before. It stops the ice from coming in and destroying stuff. There's water and there's ice, right? If that ice starts moving in, it'll just saw away at everything that's along that shoreline.
Glenn Smith says on top of the funding and the berm work, the town is also looking at other ways to prevent extreme damage in the future, such as identifying flood-proof land for future subdivisions and drainage research. Carla Ulrich, CBC News, Fort Smith.
A northern newspaper is working to keep operations going after a fire destroyed its Iqaluit office. Nunatak News assistant publisher Julia Roberts was notified of the fire via text just as she was boarding a plane. Roberts says it's devastating, but adjustments will be made to keep the newspaper operating.
Everyone has an apartment or a living space up north that has full internet and cell phone capabilities, and in Ottawa as well. So remote work is still fully functional.
Roberts says Nunatak News is looking for alternative office space. Naloxone kits were handed out in Eclipse NWT today. They were distributed at the annual community health fair. Organizers say naloxone can save the life of a person who is overdosing on opioids, and they want everyone in the region to know how to use it. The CBC's Des Loreen has more.
Over 100 people attended the fair today, with nurses and health workers sharing their knowledge, teaching elders and students how to identify an overdose. Presenters say it's easy to do.
Within 10 minutes, even the smallest of humans know how to identify an opioid overdose. They know what it looks like. They also are breaking down stigma. They know how to call for help. They know how to activate EMS. They know what Narcan is. They know how to administer nasal Narcan.
Narcan or naloxone, it's a life-saving spray. It can stop or reverse an opioid overdose. Armed with the new knowledge and naloxone kits, people in the region are more prepared.
Just that we care about our communities, we care about our people, and this is how we get the message out that they can help each other. And it may seem scary, but it's not. It's just a matter of practice and doing it.
The annual health fair is a partnership between the school and the health center. Naloxone kits are available at any health center in the NWT. Des Loreen, CBC News, Inuvik.
Divers have recovered the bodies of 2 of the victims of yesterday's bridge collapse in Baltimore, Maryland. 4 other people are still missing and presumed dead. Today, U.S. federal safety investigators started examining the voyage data recorder from the container ship. The loss of the Francis Scott Key Bridge is also a major economic concern. The port is an important link in the North American supply chain. The CBC's Chris Reyes reports from Baltimore.
One day after this stunning collapse, divers are back in the water, this time with one mission only: to recover the bodies of 6 construction crew members who plunged into the frigid Patapsco River when a massive cargo ship hit a support beam on the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore.
With the expected rain, the choppy waters, and we all know about the debris and other things that they'll be dealing with. So we also have to lift those first responders up who are putting their own lives at risk to be able to bring home those who we lost, to have some sort of closure for those families.
2 of the victims who have been identified: Maynor Yasir Suazo Sandoval, a married father of 2 from Honduras, and Miguel Luna from El Salvador, also married with 3 children. Both have lived in the U.S. for more than 18 years. Maryland's governor has been meeting with families of the victims. He says they remain his top priority.
It was heartbreaking. These are families who at that time we had a search and rescue mission going, and I told them we would deploy every asset to try to find survivors. And the promise that I make to them now is that we're going to give every asset to bring a measure of closure to them in this recovery phase.
A huge part of that closure will come from the official investigation into the crash led by the National Transportation Safety Board. They've recovered the ship's black box, which could contain a lot of answers.
Everything from positioning of ship, of the vessel itself, to speed, you name it. We hope to have that information to begin to pull together a timeline of events before the striking of the bridge.
The Biden administration says it's ready to put up the funds to get it done, no matter the expense and the time it will take, underscoring the port's massive economic importance.
The NTSB, working with multiple agencies, has a large team on the ground. They'll continue to examine the Singapore flagged vessel, question the crew members who are still on board and any other witnesses who may have been around at the time of the collision. A preliminary report is expected in 2 to 4 weeks. Chris Reyes, CBC News, Dundalk, Maryland.
People who rent homes may get more protection in the upcoming federal budget. Ottawa says it's going to bring in new measures to accomplish that, but it's not clear how the federal government will bring in these measures or when. Some of them will require provinces to get on board. As Marina von Stackelberg tells us, today's announcement is a noticeable attempt to reach younger voters.
In one of the most expensive cities to rent in the country, a promise to help tenants from the Prime Minister.
The heart of this announcement is about making sure we're focused on fairness,
fairness for renters, fairness for young people, fairness for the future.
Ottawa will create a tenant protection fund, a small pot of money, $15 million, for legal aid organizations that fight for renters who are mistreated by their landlords. The federal government also wants first-time homebuyers to be able to use their history of paying rent on time toward their credit score. And there's a promise to create a renter bill of rights. That would require landlords to be more upfront by telling a potential new tenant what they've charged for a place in the past. Measures the federal government says will help the 2/3 of young Canadians who rent their home.
To the younger Canadians here with us today, and to all of you across our amazing country, I just want to say your concerns are real. You're not making it up. Your frustration is understandable. This isn't your fault, and it doesn't need to be your future.
Ministers fanned out across the country today to make the same announcement.
What we're here to do today is to talk a little bit about renters.
This is intentional. Gen Z and millennials have in the past been key to the Liberal government's election successes. But polls show younger Canadians are moving en masse to the Conservatives.
Among those that said they voted Liberal in the last election and would vote Conservative today, they are far more likely to say housing is a top issue.
Normally, the federal government's spending plans for the next year would be revealed in its spring budget. Instead, the Prime Minister said today to expect a series of announcements over the next 3 weeks. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Kinga diwaling mulut pangwalu asyang miu muna toy muina daily tak pangwa kemuk sa palilok sa mutai ma buat taling ni pilariulok sa inuit amichwalu walang muta.
Priya doesn't love exercising, but loves the way it makes her feel. Max doesn't love cooking, but loves homemade meals with his kids. Paul doesn't love doing his taxes, but loves getting the benefits and credits he qualified for. Learn more about benefits and credits like the GST HST credit and Canada Workers Benefit at canada.ca/every dollar counts. A message from the Government of Canada.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes?
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
What does it take to reach the top? Join me, Ian Hannamansing, as I get to know some truly inspirational people who share the secrets of their success.
If you want to talk about one moment, it's a moment where I would live or die.
It changed everything on CBC News Explore.
Moments that are so on trend right now. Ticket pricing, artificial intelligence, being a Swiftie, wild fashion trends, showbiz, and cancel culture. Join me, Alameen Abdul-Mahmoud, for Commotion, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sipping on a bit of Henny, can I get a little Remy? Feeling heavy, chilling but I'm feeling ready. Pulled up in a big old Chevy.
Over in the Yukon and over the Yukon, people have been seeing things in the skies above Dawson City. Some residents have taken to social media to discuss what they describe as giant balls of fire. Sightings have been happening since February and as recently as last week. Chris McIntyre has more.
Naomi Gladish was walking her dog around last Friday morning when she saw it.
Within a fraction of a second, I realized that it was actually moving quickly. And then as I watched it, like a second later, it grew a long tail. It started changing color, like getting much brighter and then changing to like a pale blue, kind of like a gas flame blue.
Gladish says after 7 seconds, whatever it was, burnt out. But her experience didn't end there.
Like about a minute or two later, I heard a really loud noise, but it was fairly soft, like it wasn't a close boom. It was a very, very distant boom. I figured that was related to it.
Krista Van Leierhoven is the president of the Yukon Astronomical Society. She says what Gladish was describing Doesn't sound like a meteor.
One of the candidates is space junk, because space junk wouldn't necessarily glow in a consistent color in the same way, depending on what it was made out of. Another possibility is that there's somebody in the area playing with rockets, or the military is up to something, and it might be a fast plane, or it might be something else.
And as for the sound Gladys heard, Van Leerhoven says that the object was likely moving so fast it created a sonic boom. She says it's common for space junk to be mistaken for meteors, but to see either is out of this world. Chris McIntyre, CBC News, Dawson City.
Another story that tempts our eyes to the sky. We're less than 2 weeks away from what astronomers are calling a once-in-a-lifetime event, a rare total solar eclipse. Niagara Falls could be one of the best places to catch the phenomenon. The region is preparing for a surge of tourists and celestial enthusiasts. Officials have a plan in place to make sure everyone enjoys the experience safely. Katie Nicholson gives us a tour.
What are you pairing with the eclipse?
Gregory Vircha's Eclipse and Sips wine event sold out almost as soon as he floated the idea. In this vast tank, Merlot ready to be served on the big day, but he's worried his small winery will be overrun.
So for us, that's always an issue with, say, washroom capacities, with parking spots and things like this. So we're actually hiring or we're bringing in extra staff. So this is where we're going to try and set up for the eclipse.
The Niagara region is in the path of totality. It'll have one of the best views of April 8th's solar eclipse.
Everything is here that you could possibly need.
Prompting skyrocketing demands for hotel rooms at Super Bowl prices, some more than $1,000.
Most of the folks that are here are from the United States, but we do have some from overseas.
David Carroll oversees 3 hotels on the American side, 3 on the Canadian side, including this one. All pretty much sold out.
I've been in the business a long time. I'm shocked the amount of people that are coming up to this part of the United States and Canada to see an eclipse for 4 minutes. I'm really surprised. But there's a calling for it, so people are excited.
So I tested these during the day and I couldn't see a thing.
And perhaps no one is excited as the mayor of Niagara Falls.
We're preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. We know there could end up being upwards of 1 million people in the city.
The last time the falls saw anything near that number was when Nick Valenda crossed the Horseshoe Falls on a tightrope. 150,000 showed up. The city has ordered tens of thousands of certified eclipse viewing glasses, but still expects to run out.
It's kind of like get a bigger boat in Jaws, and that's kind of where we are. We're like, get more glasses.
Police have been coordinating on a safety plan, anticipating hours of gridlock throughout the region.
There is a mathematical number, so how many cars can be on the road in the Niagara region. If we overwhelm that, there's only so much we can do.
They're asking people to plan ahead, make sure they have food, water, and medication with them. Of course, if the weather is anything like this miserable March day, all that planning, the anticipation, the worry, and those glasses for nothing. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Niagara Falls.
Magic tricks are usually amusing, but not always. One man recently lost an expensive watch thanks to a sleight of hand. He thought he had been handed an envelope full of cash for the Rolex, but it turns out it was actually stuffed with flyer clippings. Kobina Oduro has that story from us from Montreal.
Moi, j'avais la 126, 116.
Laurent Mattel has been flipping Rolex watches for the past 10 years. He doesn't like to make sales in public, preferring to meet people at his home, which is equipped with cameras.
I asked him to come over here because I have a camera, so I'm protecting myself this way. And that was good because I have this guy on camera. So this is how I prefer to deal. But unfortunately, this guy was a magician.
In November, when he sold a watch for $15,000, the buyer arrived wearing a baseball cap and a medical mask. But Mattel says his polite manner reassured him.
You can see this magic pocket is right here.
The man was carrying a black pouch. He took an envelope of money out, removed an elastic, and gave it to Mattel, who counted the money before the man put it back in the envelope.
He left. I put the money in my desk, and 1 hour after, I just went in the envelope to open it and put the money somewhere else. This is how I realized I was the victims.
Magician John Vincelli demonstrates how easily the switch could happen.
And let me just give you the elastic.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Did I leave it in the bag? No, here it is, under the bag. All right, here you go.
Thank you very much.
No problem. I literally just did this. Came back out, no, it's not there, and oh, it's under the bag.
But is it a theft or a fraud? After initially approving his claim, Mattel's insurance company later disputed it, arguing he had handed over the watch willingly. Eventually, Mattel did receive $10,000 compensation. He says he's heard from others on Facebook who believe they have been duped by the same trickster.
I'm still upset about what happened to me because I know the thief is still on the road.
Mattel is hoping to get his Rolex back, but he says he's learned a lesson. From now on, he'll only do transactions in a safe zone outside a local police station. Cubino Duro, CBC News, Blainville, Quebec.
We have some exciting CBC news to share with you tonight. Starting next week, you'll be able to watch Northbeat's sister show Igalak on Inuit TV. Inuit TV is a channel focusing on Inuit culture and language. It launched in May 2022. This partnership is a way to continue both broadcasters' commitments to preserving and promoting Inuit languages. Igalak will run on Inuit TV Tuesday through Saturday at 1 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. Eastern, starting April 3rd. That's Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/north. Thanks for watching. I'm Leanie Lambrink. Have a good night.
What happens when we transform the country into one massive obstacle course? 20 total strangers are about to find out.
Okay, game on!
Relationships will be forged and crushed.
I want to rip their heads off.
In an all-out battle for glory.
Oh my God! I'm glad that there's cameras around. Yeah, me too. Do it in, replay.
Only one thing's for sure. They are not ready for what's coming.
Let's go, baby!
I'm such a fan of this show.
Listen to the podcast, Q with Tom Power.
The story itself is so unbelievable.
The industry wasn't set up for me to thrive in.
The presence I feel now is not something that I believed to be possible in the past.
So many people thought I couldn't do it. They doubted me.
I felt like I ripped my whole heart out.
I didn't realize how formative 25 to 30 would be.
I have to kind of repress my own self-doubt.
You're one of my favorite interviewers. I was pumped.
Get out of here.
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello. Dad is the master of marketing.
So handsome, both of them. How big is my face? Bigger.
Dad's a superstar wherever he goes. 2, 1.
Go back to
Daddy marketing works.
Sipping on a bit of Henny. Can I get a little Remy? Feeling heavy. Chilling, but I'm feeling ready. Pulled up in a big old Chevy. Dance floor stops and Miguel them drops. Queen with the locks and the crown on top. Feet in a box, never sound on pops. If it ain't the Henny, give me crown on rocks.